Well, hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. We are here with our hosts, Matt Scott Brady.
Matt Scott, Alan Brady Scott.
We are just a whole bunch of first names
here. 2 people with 3 first names interview people who do not have 3 first names on this podcast.
That's right. Yeah. So we're here with Pete and Ash from Moscow Moto, and we're going to talk a little bit about Moscow Moto, but we're more going to talk about the fact that these are 2 of the most inspirational travelers out there right now. You guys are doing wonderful, wonderful travel. You're doing, light and fast travel. You're getting deep into these cultures. You're spending a lot of time in these places, and you're doing just some really unusual, kind of austere adventures. We thought it would be great to hear about your most recent trip to Africa. So kind of give us the lowdown on that.
Awesome. We're happy to do that. And thanks so much for having us on this. Some of the things you just said about us, I would say about you if you were coming on a podcast we're doing. So that's funny.
Special thanks to Black Series Camper for supporting this week's podcast. If you want to get out of the campsites and follow freedom and nature, Black Series Camper can show you the way. From travel trailers to toy haulers, Black Series has options as small as 12 feet or as large as 22 feet. They have a lineup ready for any need and any situation. Get yourself and your family out to enjoy nature in comfort and in style with Black Series Camper. And you can see Black Series in person at the Overland Expo shows in 2022 in Colorado and back east in Virginia, where you can meet with their team and explore their different models on display in person. Visit blackseries.net for more information.
Our most recent trip was to West Africa. That was in February. We were there for about a month. And it was in Liberia and Sierra Leone, which are 2 countries we didn't really know a whole lot about before going there. These are like 2 little tiny countries in the middle of West Africa that have a really crazy history. And I think a lot of the world's understanding of these 2 places comes really from the Civil War. When most people think of this part of West Africa, they think of war.
Yeah.
Or they think of Ebola. And because of those 2 things, they haven't had a lot of visitors for a very long time. And they're sort of opening up to the world now. And we it popped up on our radar. We were actually supposed to be somewhere completely different in Asia. And I was back in Philadelphia visiting my folks.
We were going to Bhutan. We were going on one of the Rally for Rangers trips.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That fell through because of COVID. So last minute.
Bhutan shut down like hard.
Hard. I talked to a Liberian guy in Philadelphia, and he told us about Liberia. And this is like 2 weeks before we were supposed to go to Bhutan. And I came home. I Googled it on the flight home, broached the idea to Ash, and said, "Ash, what do you think about Liberia?" And she's like, "Where?" I was like, "Exactly. Let's get on Google." And
was there a visa requirement?
There's a visa requirement. Yeah.
How hard was it to get? I mean, was it somebody send your passport in, or is it a visa on arrival, or e-visa?
Let's see.
We did send our passports.
Did we do that for Sierra Leone or for? Oh my gosh, I can hardly remember now. So much has happened since then.
Well, we had help. I mean, this is part of the story is that we got help. We reached out to someone, or we just reached out to Facebook and our networks in general and said, "Hey, does anybody know anybody in Liberia?" We made a good contact there. And then they knew someone, they had actually worked for someone. It was someone who knew us through Moscow.
Yeah.
And then a guy in Argentina who used to live in Sierra Leone and was just connected to this whole string of people. So
fixers on the ground make all the difference.
Oh, man.
They do, yeah. And we just put it out on social, and this guy responded and ended up being a huge help to us. And so I think we got our Liberia visas through the embassy, and then Sierra Leone visas he helped us get via email. And we just booked our flights and landed in Liberia. We had really nothing lined up except a Liberian guy that he'd introduced us to there. And we didn't know much about him. He turned out he was a movie producer living in Monrovia, of all things. And the idea was basically, let's just get there, let's buy a couple of inexpensive motorcycles and go ride them around for a month and sell them at the end. And that was about the extent of it.
Is that what you guys will typically do? You won't rent, you'll buy?
We buy. Yeah. So
we won't go out of our way. If we've chosen a country where there are plenty of rental operations and it makes sense to rent.
Like it would be silly to buy scooters in Southeast Asia.
Right. Exactly. Right. Or even a motorcycle. You don't need to buy a motorcycle in Southeast Asia, just rent the motorcycle.
The only problem is I always want your passport. That's always what scares me.
Oh, keeping your passport? Yeah. So we do it when it makes sense, which is most of the time because we're picking these really obscure places that don't have any rental operations.
Rentals aren't available. Yeah, and you can acquire these bikes, for really inexpensive. I mean, we're talking...
How did you go through the process of buying the bike? The reason why I asked, I've always thought when I go to India the first time, I want to just get off the plane with a wad of cash and find the first guy.
Let's all go and bring inches of rupees.
And my thought is you just find the first dude that's about my same size and you buy his Royal Enfield and his helmet, and you just like
That would
off you
work.
go.
That would
Or be
absolutely work.
take me to the motorcycle mall.
Yeah.
Like they will have a motorcycle mall, and he can take you, or someone can take you. We should go.
We should go. That would be really fun.
That
We
would
should
be
just
so
make that
fun.
happen. I've not been to India. Let's go.
That trip you just explained is so incredibly doable. I mean, what's happened is these Indian and Chinese motorcycles, are becoming so prevalent in the developing world that there's not really any country you can't go to and buy one.
Right.
And the prices range anywhere from maybe $600 US to $2,000 US in most of these countries. And you can get at least half that back at the end by selling it to a local. And they consider that really inexpensive because the bike's still basically brand new. And you got to ride a bike for a week, a month, 2 months, however long.
How did you go through the process of registering it? Or do you just use the paperwork that they've got already on there, the license that they've already got on there?
They do everything at the dealership pretty much. They handle everything. I mean, they go so above and beyond. It's so unusual what you're doing. The place that you end up choosing will probably be one of the nicer dealerships or where there's someone who speaks English and is able to help you. So in this case, I mean, we just had more than what we needed. He tried to give us jackets and pants and helmets and like
we got that.
gallons of oil. We're like, no,
It's a furniture store. It's a furniture store. His other product is furniture. And then he has like 8 motorcycles lined up in front. He doesn't know anything about motorcycles. And that's who you buy it from. He's selling beds and sofas and stuff.
For sure. We had everything. I mean, so the day that we purchased the bikes, we came back the next morning for a couple hours. And by that time, his assistant had come back with the plates, attached them to the bike, did the last few bits of tuning, and we were out the door.
And that's pretty typical. We've done this now in a lot of different countries. So that's actually a pretty typical experience. We also did this in Ethiopia. That was one exception. Ethiopia was quite challenging and we had to pay a bunch of money and go through a bunch of hoops. We still got our licenses within like 3 days. That was
Did you
the
have to
hardest
get like a license, like a riding license or driving license for?
No, we bring international driver's licenses, but almost never get asked for them. But it's so easy to get them.
I've never been asked.
Yeah.
Wait, don't you feel like I feel like
I've been
every
asked
trip we
once.
get asked for
Corsica.
them.
And I don't know that they're really looking at it. It's like upside down, or they're like they don't actually care about it, but they do
Well,
ask
they look
for it.
so fake.
They look
totally.
super fake.
Like,
You could totally
It's
make one.
disposable. You know, like I think in those situations where we get asked, you could just as easily hand over your U.S. license and you would walk away with at worst a small fine. But the nice thing about that paper international license is you don't care about it. So it's like, hey, if somebody tries to sit on it and shake you down, it's like, keep it, screw it. Let's keep it.
Yeah, one of my tricks that I'll do is I'll stick just an extra copy of my U.S. driver's license behind my phone in the case. So you just kind of put a couple 20s in there and a U.S. license. That way you've always got a backup.
Yeah.
Just in
Like
case.
laminated, but
Just like a regular extra copy of the license.
Yeah.
Well, because you can get a burner ID, or you just say I lost mine.
That's what you do. You just say
still
you
gonna
lost
say
it
that it's
and-
valid and all of that kind of stuff.
And sometimes I do lose my wallet or for a week or two, and then I find it, and then I end up with an extra one.
I do that with an expired passport, even though the State Department puts a hole punch through it. They seem to still if we're in Thailand or something, they kind of accept that. And then I'm leaving this expired passport with the guy, not my actual passport. If I just need that.
Gotta go.
okay, I want to know how many times you lose your hidden stash of things in your bags.
Yeah, I've definitely lost that.
Or not lose it forever.
Well, you forget where you put it. You're so secretive in your location. Yes, exactly. I've done that.
I'm glad I'm not the
and then
only
like
one.
3 trips later, you're like, oh, that's where that like $200 and an extra license. You ended up being
So anyway, we ended up getting these 2 bikes. We got these.
What were the bikes?
They were called Thunder Brand. So what's happening? Thunder Brand.
I couldn't stop with the
Thunder, the AC/DC song.
like the whole trip. I
was our
was
theme
just I
song.
would get down by the bike and be like in my own world doing that.
So these bikes are these Indian and Chinese bikes. These were Chinese bikes. The Chinese manufacturers are starting to make small dual sports. So they're copies of Honda 125s, old Honda 125s. So the parts are interchangeable between the knockoffs and also with the original. The Indians aren't making dual sport bikes, but the Chinese are. And so we usually look for a Chinese brand. And these were made by Leafon, which is one of the name.
Weren't they making engines for Honda for a while? That was the story with those things.
Oh,
So
that's
Leafon of
interesting.
the Chinese factories is one of the really good ones. And so we were pretty happy to find out. So what they do is they ship them into different countries, and then the distributor in that country slaps their own label on it. So Thunder was this country's label for the Leafon, but that's what we picked up. And they were like $1,800, which
That's amazing.
yeah, brand new. And that's expensive. I mean, you could get a Bajaj for $800 brand new, but we wanted the dual sports with the Navi tires. And so that's what we got and loaded them up with some bags and just sort of headed off in the countryside, and you had no real idea what to expect. I mean, it's pretty exciting.
And everywhere everywhere we went, people would see the bike and say, "Oh, jungle bike."
Yeah, nice.
Like,
Jungle bike.
yes,
Totally a jungle bike.
Yes. They were impressive. They held up pretty well. I put that bike through its paces for sure.
Nice.
It didn't fall apart at all.
But, the cities are just nuts. You've been to African cities before, you know how it is. And especially when you just landed 2 days ago and it's like so disorienting and there's people getting in a traffic jam right away and it's like you can't move. There's any space between cars and motorcycles is packed with people and you're just kind of locked in there.
And do they drive on the left there or on the right?
It's just a complete. Oh, they drive same as us. Yeah. But I mean, they drive everywhere.
Right.
If there's an obstacle, they go anywhere.
If there's an open spot.
If there's an open spot, they take it. And so that was a little weird. And we didn't really know what would happen when we got out in the countryside. And then almost right away, leaving the outskirts of the city, it became just gorgeous and peaceful. And
wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful. And we headed out to
the beaches.
A beach. Yeah.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
And the surf. There were professional surfers. There were actually a bunch of documentarians there at the hotel that we came to on the coast. And they were all staying there to film this surfing documentary. And so they had all these pro surfers there that we were eating breakfast with and then going out into the surf. And
Liberian surfers.
It was just so cool.
That's
I actually
amazing.
stole one of their slippers on accident. I thought they belonged to the hotel to walk down to the beach. And then he's like, hey, in the afternoon, he's like, hey, could I have my slippers back? I'm gonna have to leave. And I was like, oh no.
Your hotel doesn't provide free slippers?
That's so
I just
funny.
made myself totally at home.
It's you don't. There's very little tourism there right now. I mean, they once upon a time these countries, because of the beautiful beaches, got a fair amount of European tourism.
Sure.
But then when the Civil War started, that was the end of that. It hasn't really recovered since. And so a lot of the people we were meeting were missionaries or NGOs.
I mean, past a Kanye West song, most people don't know. They don't know about Sierra Leone, right?
Right. That's right. Yeah, blood diamonds. That's another thing people associate.
Yeah.
Ebola, blood diamonds, Civil War. But all that is kind of history now, and these countries are ready to come back. And COVID kind of threw a wrench in the system.
Yeah, I bet.
But now they're ready and they're trying to get their legs back under them. And the people are just so excited to have visitors, And so it's
especially Sierra Leone, I would say, even more so, palpable excitement everywhere you
They were
go.
just kind of stoked that you were
just
there.
so stoked.
Yeah,
Everybody was so stoked.
Do they speak French there, or are they English speaking? English?
But a very unique version of English.
Okay.
It's in Sierra Leone, it's called Creole and Colloqua in Liberia. So it's a version of English that's been, Liberia is actually founded by free
slaves. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the language that the slaves brought with them, and same with Sierra Leone with the British. And so the language that the slaves brought has now been, continued to get distorted over the years, and it's turned into its own language. But you can get enough words in common to kind of navigate.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
You can usually find an English speaker.
So what was one of the really fun encounters that you had, right off the bat, where you were just like, that totally surprised me?
I got one.
Go.
I think there's not much lodging there. There's not much lodging there, and so there's no infrastructure for tourism, and so we carry camping gear for exactly that reason, because without it, you wouldn't really have the confidence to head out in the countryside, not knowing what's out there. There's no information on the internet, and so we headed out, and of course we wanted to get out on dirt roads right away and kind of get way up in the northern countryside up on the northern border with Guinea. And so we headed up that way, and what we'll do sometimes when we're out there and there's not lodging or guest houses, we'll just pull into a little settlement, ask if we can camp there, usually with hand language, and just like, hey, can we sleep here? Never been turned down. They take you to the chief. You sit down with the chief, kind of explain as best you can what you're doing. They never say no. They always say, yes, you can sleep here. And usually we give them a little money the next day. So anyway, we go to this village, ask the first person. He takes us to the chief. We have that conversation. It's really quick. And they set us up a little spot next to their tiny little mosque. And we start pulling out our tent out of our panniers and stuff like that. Man, the whole settlement came out. And it was like this event. They brought out plastic chairs. They brought out benches. They brought snacks.
Yeah, you were
Somebody
prime
brought a
time
little-
show.
You were Channel 7 that night.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
I looked back at some photos and it's like a semicircle like this, and then we're on stage like this. It was really funny.
One of the I would say middle-aged guys in the group, David, he came up to me at one point while I was setting up the tent, and he's like, Ashley, we have never seen this before, and we are very happy you are here, and we want to dance. I was like, I'm going to sleep. I hate to break it to you. I'll dance in the morning
And the next morning you did dance. The next morning the ladies came out and they were so stoked.
We
and they just started dancing and then they roped Ash in and it was like a big thing. We all got along. We're not really speaking in the same language that much, but you know how that is. It's just like this awesome vibe. Everybody's so happy. And that's one of the nice things about, I think, traveling in places where they don't get a lot of visitors is that you have this really nice equal exchange. Like obviously the way they live is novel to us, but also the way we are is novel to them. And so this, instead of the classic tourist scenario where you're the 100th person through that day and nobody really cares.
You become commoditized. You're just dollar signs, right? Because that's what their business is.
And that's a hard thing to find. And you find it in places like this that don't get a lot of visitors. And it's really nice because they're taking pictures of you, you're taking pictures of them, they're looking at your stuff, you're looking at their stuff, everybody's smiling. I mean, it's just such a nice feeling. You know?
But one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys is that's been part of your travels that's most impressed me is the fact that you do go to these very remote places. How would you describe that transition? I mean, have you just always gone to like super remote, obscure places? Was there something that changed either in you as people or in your travels that brought you to this point now where you're looking for those unusual places on the map?
I mean, we'll have different answers for this. Since we've been together, that's all we've done.
What's your answer?
And my answer is that I think I started seeking out those places before we got together. And on my first trip to Africa, it was like way too sanitized for my taste. It was very...
You can isolate yourself from the reality of Africa very quickly in Africa.
Like, that's right. Great, another ham and cheese sandwich and watching elephants behind a fence. Right. Like, this is just not what I want to be doing. Like, I want to be in it. And so I had a couple of days at the end of that trip where I was able to go off on my own and to go exploring and to just experience what it's even like, find my way and converse with people outside of that sort of structure. And then when we started dating, the first trip that we did together was Sri Lanka, and it just completely...
I remember when you guys did that. That was super cool to follow along. Like, it's such an obscure place.
Yeah.
Like people just don't really go.
India's like the main attraction.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of this little island off this side. And then it also had its civil war.
Yeah.
Which kind of set its international reputation.
I think it was you guys that kind of said it was India light. In a lot of ways. Yeah, I think I remember that like years ago.
Yeah, we did say that.
Yeah,
How about for you, Pete? What was like the impetus to like, I'm going to get really far off the beaten path, culturally and physically?
I think that, that feeling I just described is like a draw, and I think I got into this type of travel. I was a backpacker before, and then I kind of mixed the interest in motorcycles with the backpacking and realized how liberating that was to get off the bus routes and the train routes and the hostels and the little waterfall and cave tours and things that they pitch to backpackers and go off on my own. And I started having these experiences and wanting them more. And so that's been sort of leading on this path, and then the desire to kind of see the world and go to places that are unfamiliar, because that feeling of vulnerability that I get there is like really appealing. That's when all the good things happen. It's a weird thing to be like, I have to make myself vulnerable. That you have to fight some instincts. I mean, even here, I haven't seen the presentations and stuff, but there's so much information about how to reduce your risk and limit your risk and do this and take this safety thing and do this all stuff. And it's like,
then you isolate yourself from the adventure.
Yeah. But that is a weird irony. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't study those things and we shouldn't have those skills. Of course we should. But man, when you really put yourself out there is when the magic happens. And I think that it happens in places like this. And it doesn't happen anywhere else. For me personally, it doesn't happen anywhere else.
And that is one of the beauties of motorcycle travel, and even more so bicycle travel or someone who's just walking across the country.
Yeah.
The fewer barriers that you have between yourself and the local culture, the more that you are able to interact with them. So I noticed that if I'm on a 1200 BMW, I have a different experience than if I'm on some clapped out local motorcycle. So even though they're both motorcycles, I'm already a big person, and you put me on a giant bike and I start to look intimidating again.
For sure.
Whereas, especially with the dual sport stormtrooper gear.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I like your stuff, because you don't look like a stormtrooper.
We don't even wear it on these trips. Like, it's so hot usually because of the time of year that we're traveling. There's just no way. I brought my woodsman pants, gave them away a week into the trip. I was like, nope, can't do this.
It's too hot, and we have some pants coming. I actually use these Fjallraven pants a lot for this kind of stuff, but we wear street clothes, and part of that is being more approachable, and part of it's being more comfortable. And then you're also on the same bike as the locals, so you're removing these barriers.
Totally.
I had an experience in Laos. I broke my leg in Laos a couple years ago. I crashed. Ash Ash and I were riding up like way up north in Laos, near the China border, and crashed and broke my leg. And I had to go to Thailand to go to the hospital. And Ash continued and had this epic trip through Laos and then Vietnam. And I went off to Thailand. This guy loaned me a Jeep, went to the hospital, got a cast, all that stuff. And he's like, well, while you're killing time, here's a Jeep. And I went up and drove up in the mountains. And the experience I had going straight from the motorcycle, and then like 4 days later, I'm on this Jeep. And it was like, nobody talked to me. And I mean, even my broken leg was a conversation piece, but it didn't work. You know what I mean? It was like I would go into restaurants and come out. Totally different. And on the motorcycle, you stop to get gas and people cluster around. Where are you going? What are you doing?
If you have an open face helmet on, they can see your smile and your expression, and they can see that you're dirty and wet. And you can only bring so much with you. You need a place to stay. Yeah. And it does change the dynamic much more than when you're driving a four-wheel drive.
Totally.
And it's even worse when you're in some giant like expedition assault vehicle where some of them do.
Like I would hide, maybe.
I think a lot of them do. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it looks like the military's coming through town.
Yeah, totally.
So I think making yourself use a fun color on the car, roll the windows down and give them a high five and smile, and like if you're in a car, try to open yourself up more to the space, for sure.
Do you remember that guy, Jim Rogers, with the venture capitalists, and he took the Mercedes two-seater and put it on a G-Wagon chassis and
bright yellow car. Yeah.
And drove it around the country, around the world. I mean,
yeah, it looked like a circus. Miles. It looked like a circus car, and of course, it made people like a little more disarmed.
What in the heck is that?
Yeah.
And he had a matching
That's a great book.
Too. That's a great book. Yeah.
Okay,
he was one of the first to do that.
I mean, I guess we're talking about the adventure capitalist guy. I mean, one of the things that I admire about you guys, but I'm also really curious about is you run a successful growing business. And kind of the same thing, how do you make the time? Like what is your thought process? Is it part of just who Moscow is? I mean, we try and get out and travel, but is it how you've structured the business with being like direct to consumer and not having the phone ringing all the time from somebody? There's this stigma. It's weird, even in this industry now, there's become a stigma against, we were a travel industry and now we're like becoming a stuff industry. The travel's almost being forgotten. We're not doing anything as crazy as you are in the next few weeks. We're gonna go to the Arctic Ocean. And I mentioned that to people, like some of my dealers and stuff from Maxtrax, and it's like, what if I need to get a hold of you? Well, there's other people that can do that. There's like a meme on the internet that's like European vacation responder. I'm leaving for the summer. Please email me like at the end of the year. And then the American vacation responder is, I'm currently undergoing a kidney transplant. I will update you every 15 minutes and I will be available by email.
Quick, not totally serious, but semi-serious answer is actively tell people that you don't look at your email.
Yeah.
And don't look at your email.
Yeah.
And have good employees and go. Just go. Like literally put it on the calendar and just go.
Yeah, our team is
the only way.
I have a really good team and they've been very supportive of this, and we try to offer the same opportunities and time for them to do trips.
Yeah, you have to have happy people, skilled people. You have to hire the right people, but then you have to let them go out and do what they're going to do. I've always felt that you can't be the guy at the top that's getting to have all the fun and not bring people with and not provide those same opportunities, So I think that's just what has been so unique to me looking at like Moscow as a business, is that we're not like close friends or anything, but I follow you guys and I admire what you do, because from the get-go you've been doing this, and then I see huge trailers and I see you guys pop up here and pop up here and pop up here, and you continue to travel.
Yeah.
And I think that it shows people that it can be done. A lot of people are just afraid to break away from the venturing into the unknown is almost not venturing into the wilderness or whatever. It's venturing into the unknown of what happens to my job? What happens if I don't check my email?
Right.
What happens if, what is your advice to the people out there that are, whether they're working at, a 9 to 5 or they're an entrepreneur or business owner, or like whatever it is, like, I mean, aside from, just don't check your email, like what is that elevator pitch, that elevator speech to that guy or girl to go?
Can I say one more thing before you? Okay. Yeah. One thing about our business is that the product comes first. And the only way that the product is the way it is Andrew, of course. We aren't designers. We ride more than anybody else does.
Yeah.
We spend more time on a bike. We know the product more intimately. Maybe not more intimately than Andrew, but our feedback is imperative to the product line improving and growing,
Well,
etc.
and it shows because you, in your space, you are the innovators and you're also the ones that are doing it. And I think that is inextricably linked. There's a lot of brands around here that have become like, I'm not going to say corporate because I think that's kind of a weird term, but they stopped doing what they did that got them to where they are. For sure. You know, they if they stop traveling, then they stop having the ideas to develop the products and they're not actually out there refining it, and you end up with stagnation. As the overland industry, there's a lot of stagnation right now.
Yeah, you're either innovating or you're dying.
You're innovating and then it's a light bulb that's gone on for me is the people that are innovating are actually the only ones that are out there doing it, which is really cool.
I mean, I think, if you start a business doing something you love and you get into it and you have a little bit of success and you get an income and you have a team, and then you get to find out how much you really love that activity. Because some people get to that situation and the last thing they want to do is the thing they thought they loved before they started a business.
Right.
Other people, the business throws the doors wide open for all sorts of opportunities to engage with the activity, and they go full bore into it. And that's what's happened to us. You know, the business has opened a lot more doors to ride and travel. We've gone through those doors, loved it, brought good feedback back to the business. That's helped the business. The business has opened more doors.
Yeah.
And it's turned into this wonderful feedback loop.
And you've surrounded yourselves with really great people. Like, I mean, Bill Whitaker comes to mind. I mean, just really exceptional human beings that have helped you solve problems and overcome challenges.
I mean, I just can't emphasize the team part of this enough. And selling direct helps a lot because our customers have been very, very understanding. You know, it's not a lot of businesses where you're like, oh yeah, we're in Africa riding. And instead of like, oh, screw you guys, people are like, sweet, that's awesome. I'm glad you guys
didn't respond to my email in 5 minutes. I hate you. I'm buying the rest of the stuff.
You're like, that's badass. They're in Africa. And then they hit our customer service team and there we go. But I still think we're fortunate to be in, have this like nice integration of our work in our lives. I think also for other entrepreneurs that are struggling with that, there is likely to be a cost to your business for doing this, for being gone, and especially when you're small before you build a team. And to think that there won't be might be a little bit naive,
That
but you might have to get comfortable with that in order to get comfortable making this space. You may miss a sales opportunity, or your income may be a little bit lower this year, or you may frustrate a team member because you're not available to answer a question. But some of those you can head off a little bit, especially with the team. If you're the type of business manager that puts yourself as the bottleneck on every decision, then you're going to cause a lot of frustration for your team when you leave. But if your team is capable of making decisions,
capable and enabled,
then you leaving is an opportunity for them to shine. Like the Patagonia, and Yvon Chouinard talks about his MBA is management by absence, which I thought was hilarious, but I'm not sure we've gone that far, but I do think it's a neat thought. And look at Patagonia, he's gone half the year.
Yeah, he hired a bunch of really smart, capable people.
He did. He's got a great team, and that's not where we're going. We love our business. We love what we do for a living. The travel and the riding just fits like a glove. I mean, the good ideas never come when we're sitting at our desks.
Well, and that's what I was going to mention is most of the changes, or the big changes that we've made to our businesses, have come from being out in the field. And you get that moment of stillness. You kind of quiet down some of the chatter. The monkey mind slows down just a little bit. Your heart rate drops a little bit, and then like you get this spark of inspiration. And I know, Matt, for you it's the same. You need to be out.
You see it more than anybody with me. Like,
I do.
Scott and I have mirrored buildings. We're in the same complex. I think even our desks are in the same place and in the same mirrored buildings, The guy that's sitting in the office designing products is going to be the guy sitting in the office designing products. He's not out there. He doesn't actually understand the needs of that consumer. You're just going to look at what everybody else is doing and how can I do what everybody else is doing?
Right.
And you never want to be that person.
Yeah. Everybody on our team rides. Everybody has a bike. We ride together. We ride separately. We do trips. And that our design team, everybody on the design team rides. I mean, so it's just like totally baked in the DNA of the business. And I think that shows in the product. And, the line between us and our quote unquote customers, I say that because it's just like such a blurry line. We are them. They are us. Sometimes they help us at events. We're out using the product ourselves. I mean, it's like, who's what?
It's a recurring theme that I have with founders that I talk to is that I wasn't building this for anybody else. I was building it for me. Like when we chatted with Brad on the couple podcasts ago, that was the thing that I took away from that is I wasn't like trying to find something to sell. I was just trying to find a solution on my own. Like I wanted to solve that problem for myself, and hopefully some other people find it interesting and they want it.
And oftentimes they do. When you
Yeah.
build something genuine that solves a genuine problem for yourself, oftentimes other people want to buy it. And that's definitely what's cool about what you guys do, is that you're not the first soft luggage that's available, but it is certainly one of the first that's been built by people who ride a lot, drop bikes a lot, need to go in and out of hostels. Like that's one of the challenges. Like it can take 10 minutes to get some of these soft bags off of a bike. For you guys, it's just a couple clips and you slide the thing right out of there and you're gone.
Yeah.
You know, you're into the coffee shop doing work. I mean, it's working. It's working. So, but you guys know that from having done it.
That type of experience absolutely shaped the mounting system on the backcountry Panniers. That was like that exact type of experience you're describing was part of the idea
founding,
to make a frame pack.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it works so much. And then it still doesn't break your leg when you catch a rock or something, you know, so.
Yeah, when I first got into motorcycles, I was like, oh, I want hard luggage because somebody can't steal it and this and that. And then I actually I got into motorcycle trials and I got into racing enduros and I'm like, I don't want to break my leg. Sure. And then I got Moscow stuff, mainly because I'm on the Scott Brady hand-me-down program and it has a lot of benefits.
I want to get on that program.
Yeah, it's really good, especially because we're like the same size
We are.
and we have the same tastes. So it's great. It's great.
I like how we started with, are we wearing the same pants?
We did start.
Well, I kind of learned everything from him. So
Well, and even soft luggage can be solved on the security side as well. I mean, there's a company called PackSafe that makes these very cool mesh metal, and they're not even an enclosed bag. Some of them are, but you can put the bag around this meshed.
Yeah, we've looked
This
at
mesh,
those.
and then you can lock it to the bike.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to get off. It's actually probably harder to get off than hard.
I wonder if it makes you more of a target though. Sometimes I'm always a little sketched out by being the guy that has like those travel pants that have like
Please don't.
the locks and your pants are actually made of Kevlar and carbon in case somebody's gonna slash your pant. I'm like, dude, if somebody's slashing your pant, like
You have bigger
the
problems.
$50 in local currency that you have in your cargo pants is
Just give it to
probably
them.
just give them the thing and then don't end up with like a slashed femur or whatever it would be.
They're not going to think you have blood diamonds in your pocket.
totally.
Why would you be guarding it?
We have that security conversation all the time, and we actually have a pretty cool locking system on our backcountry Panniers. We're not doing a commercial here, but like people can check that out. If you leave your bike unattended and give a thief the time and the space to work on it with the tools of their choice, they're going to get into anything.
No
And
doubt.
there's a video on YouTube that shows a couple guys stealing a bike on a city street, and they pull up in a van. The two guys jump out, lift the bike, throw it in the van, shut the door. It's under 15 seconds. They're gone with the entire bike.
Yeah.
You know, forget about breaking into a hard pannier or a soft pannier. So like, and I think for people that really do a lot of international travel, understand that. And you're kind of always aware of where your bike is. Is someone watching it? If you're going to sit and have lunch, you're going to keep an eye on it. It's like, it never ends up being a problem.
Well, people are always scared of the unknown, right? Like some people steer themselves to the unknown and some people are very afraid of it. You get comfortable in the environment and the country that you live in. The reality is that, I love America and I think it's great, but America's not like Switzerland. It's not Australia safe. It's not like Japan.
Yeah.
Like we have problems here too.
We have St. Louis. I mean,
but everybody always
I'd
has that
rather walk
idea
around
that I'm
Johannesburg
going
than St. Louis,
overseas.
for sure.
Therefore, I won't be safe. Like, there's poor people there. They're gonna want what I have.
Yeah.
Like that is like the mistake
Yeah, the
of
assumption.
that people
It's
make.
a total mistake.
And it's like I've met some of the it's almost like when you're the most vulnerable as a traveler, you meet the nicest people.
Oh, for sure.
Like I can't think of the amount of times I've been somewhere in Asia on a scooter and I don't have this is like pre like Google Fi or whatever where your phone just like worked. And you get a guy that hops on a scooter and takes you back to the right road and whatever. And you just like without making yourself a bit vulnerable, you're never gonna have those experiences because you just build up the walls.
Yeah.
And I think that's just one of the cool things I've seen in your travels that I really admire is you don't walk into these situations in these countries with any pretension, with any expectations, it seems. You actively want to be a part of their lives are. You're not trying to, you're sleeping, you're asking the chief to sleep. You're not like, I want to have that kind of experience, but where's the Four Seasons? I mean, that's what me and Scott do, but I'm joking, kind of, not really. Sometimes, maybe. Avoiding that question.
It's very necessary every once in a while to get a nice hotel and get cleaned up. I'm like, okay, we gotta find somewhere to take a shower.
I cannot stand myself today. And you do get to that point, you're like,
Who is that that smells.
You're like, that's me. Like,
It's you.
literally so funky right now.
I can tell it's happening when I just start leaving my helmet on and not getting off my bike, and I'm like,
we were talking a little while ago about the way that people get sort of anesthetized tourists in these areas like near the main attractions, and I also think that's where the worst crime happens.
Yeah,
and
there's opportunity.
There's opportunity. We kind of have a saying that we say to each other that in order to have predators, you got to have prey, and that wherever the prey is concentrated, the predators are concentrated. And you're for example, you would have a lot more issues with theft and pickpocketing right outside the gate
Train station or something.
Train station
no doubt.
than you would out in the countryside. There's not enough prey to support a predator.
No.
So you can feel very confident out there that the people that seem like they want to help you are really trying to help you.
And
but
Totally true.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like the intuition, we have this wonderful intuition and we all have it. Some people just are able to tap into it and others are unfamiliar with that. But if you have and can tap into that intuition, just don't, follow it. If you
Trust
feel
it.
like somebody is behind you, maybe look over your shoulder. But it doesn't mean that the whole place is dangerous. Like
Always listen to the voices in your head.
Well,
Trust each other too. Like if maybe one of you are like, this is the best thing ever, and the other one is like, this doesn't. You just trust the other person and you move on.
Ooh, that's a good one to go into, is traveling as a couple.
I was going to say on that, so another thing we talk about sometimes is the experience of being spooked. I'm sure you guys have felt this before. You ever arrive somewhere tired after a long day, and you're like, wow, this place is so sketchy, and that guy's so weird. He must be mafia. Like you get this like weird feelings, and then you wake up the next day and have breakfast, and you're like, oh my god, where was my?
What was I
totally
thinking?
normal.
Yeah, it is like totally.
But when you're tired and when you're stressed and when you're exhausted,
And you haven't eaten,
your
blood
body, your
sugar's
mind is
dropping.
going to go into self-preservation mode.
Totally.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
So
isn't it?
And it becomes the boogeyman because your blood
But
sugar's
then that goes back to having the nice hotel every once in a while, especially when you're like you guys are traveling and you're putting yourself into these situations that are more stressful, more challenging, whatever. I think people forget is like the purpose of travel is enjoyment. It's not really to prove anything. Like so many people, they're like, I want to get the Boy Scout badge of going here and here and here and here and here. But it's really it's about everything that you do outside of that tourist trap or outside of that, and you have to make sure that you're in the right mindset. And if that means I'm gonna do a hotel every week, it's not a competition. A lot of traveling is not a competition.
It's not.
You do it for yourself.
Yeah.
So be comfortable. Yeah. Because then you're not going to think that, the guy's mafia and trying to steal your bike when it's not actually a reality,
I do think that's a good idea, though. We should talk about traveling as a couple. What have you guys learned? What have you guys learned about each other through travel, and how have you learned to travel well together? Let's start on that one.
I mean, I'll just start by saying we travel so awesome together. Like, it's crazy. People ask us about working together, living together, traveling together. Like, how do you do all of this together? Like, don't you drive each other crazy? But actually, no. I mean, I probably drive him crazy sometimes. Yeah. I'm the moody one. He's like calm and 70 degrees all the time.
So you're Laura, and then we're the same.
Traveling, I feel like I've just watched Pete have so much like patience and courage and leadership, just this natural leadership. I mean, I would follow him anywhere. Literally.
You have to.
Literally. And we travel really well together. Like I said, I'm the one who struggles more with like my mood or like getting into a bad headspace during travel. I'm like I experience things in an intense manner. The world I've always experienced in an intense manner. So when we go to these places, there are times where it's hard for me. It's really hard for me because of what I'm seeing or how I'm feeling or that it's what it's stirring up. Yeah, Pete's like so patient. He's like, oh, well, let's just stay here for 2 days. We'll just stay here. You can, chill and like go to the beach or do whatever, whatever it is.
You've got to give yourself some grace, and you have to recognize that people are different, Mm-hmm. Running a business together is almost like the perfect preparation for traveling together in a lot of ways.
It can be.
It's stressful situations. One's livelihood, one's enjoyment, or the opposite. Like with my wife and I, we traveled extensively together for a while. Then we went into business. But going into business, people are like, how do you work together? I don't know. Like, it's been like way worse because we've been through all these incredibly stressful situations. When you're in wherever the Hellistan and you get bit by a dog and you have to get rabies shots or something together, and you're like, oh yeah, it wasn't as bad as that. Like this is just work. Yeah. I should tell myself that more often, actually. But
that's a really important insight, is recognizing, and it sounds like, Pete, that you do a good job of this, is recognizing that Ashley needs a moment to be with those experiences. Why cut that short? Like, you're feeling this intense experience. Why cut that off and just try to go a different direction? I think that's the wrong path. I think being able to sit for a minute with what you're feeling and fully process that, download it, maybe
I think
adjust.
you have to download and process those memories. Otherwise, it just gets overwhelming. When you're traveling, especially with what you guys do, you're in constant stimulation. And eventually you can get stimulation fatigue, and you have to just
Well, and I have this rule of, like, I don't want to be just in a place. I want to be of it. So I want to learn it. I want to, like, be down in the dirt. I want to know what it smells like. I want to know what everything tastes like. Like, I really want to be of the place. And so me actively doing that every day is taxing. You know, it's just like, whoa, I just run out. I'm like an Energizer bunny, and then I turn into a toddler, and I'm like, somebody change me and put me to bed. Like, I need to go to sleep right now. So we've been together long enough that, like, this will be our 7 years of traveling together. Like, we've kind of got it down now, and never has it been hard. It's been awesome.
We're not really going anywhere. I mean, we're just traveling. So 2 days here, 1 day here, 1 day somewhere else. Who cares? Like, interesting stuff could happen right here. We don't even know. It's that there could be boring and rainy. Who knows? Like, it's like you stopping for a day is no big deal. You know, but another aspect, I think, couples traveling that I was just thinking of while you were talking is the way other people interact with you is interesting. And also your own social needs. Like, all of us have traveled alone, so we know what that feels like. And there is a hunger that develops when you're isolated in a place far away. You don't speak the language, and that hunger sort of builds up, and eventually it pops, and you need to interact. And you put yourself in situations where you're going to have these interactions. And when you're traveling as a couple, you're interacting with each other all the time, so your social needs are met. You behave a little bit differently in that scenario than you would alone. But then also there's the way the world interacts with you.
Like your drive, right? Like your drive to go out and do.
Yeah, like, do you ever feel the need to travel alone?
Sure. We do have that. Yeah.
Because, like you said, like, sometimes when you are traveling with somebody, you're not as likely to strike up a conversation with that person at the bar, or this person wherever you are. And you almost don't get the same experience sometimes. Because, as you're saying, like, you guys might be on different wavelengths or different stages of the day. One might be a little bit more fatigued than the other, and then you kind of just focus on each other's needs. I don't really travel alone a lot. When I do have that opportunity, it sounds bad, but I do actually savor it, because it's kind of a similar thing. For a long time, I've always, had.
I think it's important
because it's selfish, and I think it's weird, but it's important to be selfish when you travel, whether that's solo or as a couple. I found, like, you have to be able to speak up, particularly to your partner. I want to stop for this. Because not everybody is the same person, and not everybody has the same goals. Laura's a lot more interested in nature. I'm a lot more interested in cars and mechanics and cities and culture. She's interested in that too, but everybody's different, and you have to communicate, I feel. I mean, like...
This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com.
I mean, how do you guys, do you actively communicate about those things when you're on the road?
We try.
We try. As quickly as possible. That is, like, the key. I mean, just in relationships in general, I think keeping a short account and just, like, doing it as quickly as possible. Like, I actually had something on this trip that I don't know what, my inner saboteur wanted me to spin on it for a couple weeks before I said it out loud, that it was bothering me, and it was, like, not even a big deal. Could have been taken care of immediately. Pete was, like, making videos, but he didn't have headphones in, and so I was hearing, like, the same sound bite just go, like, a zillion times. And so for like 2 weeks, I just was being mildly resenty. Like, not the kind that's going to stay forever, but just the kind of like, oh, what the
The little stuff that adds up.
I was like, poor Paula, she has to listen to
As soon as she said it, I was like, oh, I'm such an idiot, of course, you know.
So anyway, that we definitely do.
We're getting a little close on time to wrapping things up. We got a couple questions we'd like to finish with.
Hit us with them. Yeah.
We always like to ask if there are books that have been an inspiration to you, books that you've read that you love, and if there's not, that's totally. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with overlanding. Like it can just be like, wow, this.
Yes, it can be anything. Like my answer is Dr. Seuss.
I love Jupiter's Travels. That was a great read, but that's like almost a cliche answer. It's so epic, but
it is amazing.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Because he was so early in that process.
And I just love this, like, early, that's a good word.
Yeah, that's
there's a lot. I read a ton, but I've always on the spot. I'm like, gosh, what's a book?
Yeah,
but that's one that definitely impacted me.
I would say The War of Art.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
It's a good one. It's one that I
really
read. I try to read like once a year, just to kind of refresh and seed it into my mind. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I do have one more. What's next? What's the next crazy place that you're gonna fly into and buy a bike? And
well, that's a good question. Are we going to India in February? July or not?
It's still TBD. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah,
maybe India.
We're interested in getting up.
I hear that's the ultimate stress test for couples is traveling in India.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of had our eyes on that far northern. It's kind of that above tree line, shaly terrain, as glacial river, that kind of zone. So that's definitely on our radar. We're always interested in more Africa trips. You know,
so Bhutan is on the calendar.
Bhutan is coming up in
October.
Yeah, October. Yeah, so
amazing.
And but we reserve the right to like change our minds like that. I mean, we could be like, this happens several times. Like we're weeks from going on a trip, we go to a totally different continent. We just
be selfish because travel is about nobody but yourself.
You guys,
If you're doing travel for other people, maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah, reel it back in. Thank you both so much for being on the podcast. You're truly an inspiration. We look forward to seeing what you're going to do next. So
thanks, Scott.
You guys give me so many good excuses. Well, they do it. Why can't I?
Just come with us.
Let's go together, man. Let's do a trip for real. I love that.
Yeah.
Man,
thank you guys so much. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally. All right, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
All right.
Wow, that was great.